Hello, everyone. This is Alexandra Tachalova, and this is SEO in 2025.
Alexandra, what's your number one SEO tip for 2025?
Well, I would recommend start focusing on the right type of links, especially in the age of AI summarized results, right? Where it's extremely important to get links in the right context and for sure on the right website. But I think it's more about building up your brand, right? And less about SEO value. And that is exactly what we try to do, right? Looking for maybe trying to a little bit facilitate the process of acquiring links through marketing initiative rather than through SEO ones.
Okay, lots to chew on there. You started talking about right links, right context, right websites. And I'd also like to talk about your marketing-orientated acquisition of links, which sounded interesting as well. But let's start at the right links. So what are the right links to acquire in 2025?
Well, the one that define very well your brand and explain clearly what you do. So, for instance, the great example will be all sort of listicle posts, right, that are targeting the keyword, the search terms that are defining your business. So let's say if you are Majestic, then you have to be featured on all sort of SEO tools, listicle posts, link building, related listicle posts, and so on.
Okay, good stuff. And the right context. Why is that important?
Yeah, well, one more time, circling back to, listicle post, because that is a very understandable, great example. So whenever you're featured among the same tools, right, and the same solutions that are quite close, right, to your niche, or even, they're in the same niche, then Google can easily understand what you do. And as a result, whenever, a user will be using AI-generated results, your tool will be featured there, right? Because you got links in the right context one more time.
Okay, so big fan of listicle posts. You've mentioned that a couple of times there as well. So should you, as a link builder, be creating the listicle post yourself and then selling that post, or trying to get someone else to publish that? Or is it about finding other listicle posts that already exist and trying to get your link on there?
I would just go with the ones that are already existing, because normally the ones that are ranking quite high in Google search, that are the ones that have already gained some authority, right, from good websites. And normally, right, the problem there that if you are part of a well-established niche, it's very, very challenging to outrank this post if you create your own one. And if you can't really beat them, right, why not to join them?
So how do you actually persuade them to get your link included on there?
Well, there is a trick with all that AI-generated fluff, right, that we have across the web, and people are looking for real expertise. And if your pitch will be around, I'm the real expert because I know this market inside out, I represent, Majestic, and that is the tool that has been proven to be a market leader, and so on and so forth. And I know this niche inside out. And I decide just, pitching my tool, I would love to improve the quality of your, listicle post. I can give you some better examples. I have some ideas of how we can make your content more in-depth, right? So, and I think this kind of, well, at least in our situation, it works very well. That's how we present our client. That's how we create our pitches. And normally it works very well because this expertise element, everyone is looking for it.
Got you. Okay, so you're viewing the post, you're discovering the post, and then you're actually reading the content, and then you're actually providing them with maybe an additional paragraph or two for the content that they can just copy and paste and add value to it by doing that.
Yeah, exactly. So you run the negotiation, you see what they want, all right? Because you ask questions during this process. You kind of ask, okay, do you want me to suggest some improvement? Do you want me to suggest some extra tools that I know that you also missed out in your content, and so on, right? So, but yeah, it's more or less about making the content fuller and more in-depth.
So how do you go about finding the listicle posts that you want to appear on?
Well, it's quite easy. You can use any tool, and even like, Google search engine results, you put like, link building tools, email outreach tools, whatever you want, right? You see, well, first of all, you need to brainstorm, but you must probably know as a business owner or as a business representative, right? As a marketer that works for the particular business, what kind of search terms define your business, right? And then you can kind of do it manually, right? Then you can use tools like SEMrush, Ahrefs, right? That provide you actually, any results for any search term. And then you can use even a free tool, which is called, I think that is the one from SEMrush, SEO Quick Toolbar, right? That allows you to just export any search engine results.
So how do we measure the success of acquiring a new link nowadays?
Yeah, I would say there is one more thing that I think is worth mentioning about, listicle posts or the posts that have a very high buying content, because normally users that are looking for these posts, they are looking for the right solution for them. And as a result, besides just bringing, brand awareness and the right context and the right link, even though this link might be no follow because you might be lucky enough to get featured on the website of your competitor, right? You still get leads because, one more time, that type of, the user that are looking for that type of keywords, they're in the right state of mind. And normally if you get a link on a page that is ranking quite high in Google search, then you also get referral traffic. So it's, a compound effect of all possible benefit that you can get from link.
And are there additional benefits to AI picking up on these posts as well?
Yes, just because I would say AI technologies, right, and machine learning is based on analyzing the text and then seeing similarities and seeing similar things that are mentioned in the same context. And as a result, the chances of appearing or co-appearing in the AI-generated lists that will be, about around your product are increasing because of these very relevant mentions. And we've been quite successful with this, seeing the dependencies between this.
And does this also have a positive impact on brand?
Obviously, right? Because even like, nowadays, if you, without AI-generated results, we also have this extended search engine results. If you look for something like top tools for this niche, you will see, them kind of listed like a snippet. Actually, the trick there, if you want to be featured there, then you just need to be featured in a good number of top ranking posts, right? That are actually covering this keyword or keyword that are close to this one in terms of meaning. So it's quite straightforward, being honest, right? But I think a lot of SEOs have been overlooking this or have been not really much focusing on this just because, normally they were trying to get, links in a bit different type of, campaign they were running, I would say, right? But I think it was a very, very overlooked strategy.
So is there initial work that you have to do to establish your brand entity before you actually progress to reaching out and trying to build links?
Yeah, well, that is something that might be a bit of a roadblock, right? If you're just a very, very new business, right? And you haven't established yet your brand name, that might be quite challenging, right? To talk with other brands, especially the well-established ones. But you can always, if you have something that you can show, I don't know, for instance, you've been speaking somewhere or you've been quite successful in delivering a particular campaign, you can always refer to this, right? Saying that, we've been recently, I don't know, featured on this well-known website, right? So, so people can see that they can trust you. And normally a good company, they try to get this, type of brand mentions, try to run different marketing initiatives, even at early stages.
So how do you know the other brands that you want to be associated with? I guess what you're doing is you're doing competitor research and you're actually trying to find out who your optimum competitors are before searching for links pointing towards that particular competitor.
Yeah, well, normally actually it starts a bit differently. We just ask, right, businesses how they define themselves. And normally they know pretty well what kind of either product or service they provide and what kind of search terms are the most important for them. And that's exactly how we approach this. But for sure, right, if we want to expand this list, then we do, right, a research and we'll be suggesting some complementary topics that might be not right exactly the ones that define the business, but for instance, like, you can use Majestic for content marketing as well, right? So, which means that, being featured on content marketing lists of tools is also not a bad idea, right? But firstly, you need to secure the core, because if you go a bit in a wrong direction, then you will end up with a bit of misleading core associations around your brand, right? And you want to have the core, which is very clear.
Okay, so we've focused on listicle type posts as a great opportunity to build links in the age of AI because it associates your entity with other entities and teaches search engines what your brand is about. Are there any other types of links that you really favor in 2025?
Yeah, I think there is a good number of links that you can get from public speaking, being actually featured on podcasts, for instance, because the beauty of these links in their, let's say, like kind of marketing angle, because you obviously get them not just because you did, something as a link builder, but more like you do it as kind of a brand that want to share the expertise, right? From that standpoint. And also, it increases the chances of, generating some leads, especially if we talk about webinars, online events, and finally about offline events. And obviously, that type of links, they're quite unique because not a lot of brands are quite focusing on this, and that can differentiate you, right, from the rest of other businesses. And obviously, that type of links showcase that you're quite real. And that is also a very important element nowadays.
I mean, is it all right just to focus on one type of link? I mean, for instance, if you were great at being a guest on podcasts, just to focus on that, to try and be on as many podcasts as possible and have your backlink there as well? Or is it much more important to have a broader type of link pointing towards your website?
A good question. I don't really know. We've never, because normally people are asking for diversification because they want to, see how different type of links work for them. And they try to tighten up them with different, let's say, like marketing also activities or with different ways of estimating, maybe trying to estimate the value of these links, right, from a business standpoint. But I think if, right, your business is all about maybe public speaking, right, that is making total sense. That's how you can, prove that you are a real expert because you get all that type of, various, podcasts, events. So you get that type of links and you do this really, right? Yeah, but I think it all comes down to what you want to reach and how you can actually, turn these links into something meaningful for your business. If you know how to work with podcasts, right? You know how to convert leads from podcasts. You have a good funnel and good understanding, then that might be your go-to channel. Why not?
Got you. Okay. So it's all about trying to actually obtain traffic and real value from those links and not just try to boost your rankings in search engines.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think nowadays links are a very fundamental also element of kind of your marketing, just because that is the way of getting referral traffic, then leads, and then clients, right? And you have to be quite strategic with what you want to do with them. Besides just thinking about an SEO element, that is for sure is still there, but not as important as something beyond it.
If an SEO is struggling for time, what should they stop doing right now so they can spend more time doing what you suggest in 2025?
Good question. I think I've been thinking about, co-marketing campaigns. And that is what we are really trying to suggest to our clients as well, because that's the way of exchanging traffic, if you know what I mean, right? So if you can find a brand that is quite complementary to you, and this brand also has a good database, then you can do something together or even, find more brands And then you can exchange, right, your databases in a very meaningful way. You can co-promote each other, and by this grow. And this seems to be a very, from one side, natural, organic activity. From other side, that will kind of give you a huge boost to all possible verticals, right? Brand element, leads, and might be something else, right? Depending on what kind of co-marketing activities you're going to go after.
Alexandra Tachalova is founder at Digital Olympus, and you can find her over at digitalolympus.net. Alexandra, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2025.
Thank you very much for having me, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2025, the book, over at SEOin2025.com.